Hey, what's up everyone? So today I will be rebuilding the front shocks of my truck, and the shocks I have on them are not for this truck actually. So this is a 2013 F-150 that I've Raptor swapped, and I run Gen 2 Raptor shocks. So I think the years are like 2017 to 2019 or so, but essentially they're the Gen 2 Raptor shocks that are non-live valve. So I'll go ahead and give you a tutorial on how I do it. And I'm only doing that because there's not a lot out there. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just trying to show you how I accomplished it and show that it is doable to do on your own. But there's experts out there that could probably tell you a lot better than I can, and also probably do a better job than I can. So just keep that in mind as you're doing this. But if you want to try to attempt to do it yourself, this might be a helpful guide. Thanks. All right, so here it is. Got it off the truck, and there's plenty of videos on how to do that, so I'm not going to go over that. A couple things I wanted to go over real quick are, first thing you probably want to do is you probably want to mark everything to keep it in line. So mark the top hat here, this bushing, the spring itself, just all the different components you can. Whoever put these springs on last time, I think, did something backwards. So I'm actually going to flip this 180, so that way I can have the Schrader valve be outboard, if you will, on the truck. So I'll get into that later. But anyway, so that's all marked up, and so the next thing you have to do is obviously you got to take the spring off. So that's a complicated part, or probably the most intimidating part of this whole project. So I'm using these, I don't even know what brand these are, it's on here somewhere, these OMT spring compressors. I probably got them off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description for those. There are probably better tools. There are certainly better tools to use out there than these. These do get the job done, albeit it is a little sketchy. The whole all thread here ends up kind of bending as this whole thing tightens up. So you'll probably see that when I show you here in a bit. But yeah, there are better options out there, and I might also put links for those in the description as well. The other thing you will need to take the spring off is a kit with a pass-through socket. So what this pass-through socket set allows you to do, allows you to grab the nut here with your socket. Hopefully this does not fall off the bench. And then you can use a secondary ratchet with this hex head adapter on this one. The kit comes with a whole bunch of different adapters. And that slides through there, and you can, obviously that'll key in, or should key in. There we go. And then you can put a ratchet on that, and that's how you can hold the rod in a single position while working the nut off. So anyway, those are the two things you'll need for this first step of removing the spring. All right, so I've got it all set up. I do have some tape on the spring. I did this on my other front shock already, and I noticed that it did chip some of this powder coating on. Granted, this is some sort of aftermarket powder coating. I don't know who did it. I got it used from a guy in Utah. But anyway, so I've tried to put some tape on here to try to protect it. We'll see if it works. I'm not sure. All right, so now I'm going to tighten these. I'm going to try to tighten these as evenly as I can between the two. So do a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, just keep alternating back and forth. And I'm going to do it until the spring lifts off this bottom perch here. Just because then I'll know that theoretically there's no more, the spring is not exerting pressure onto the top hat, because it needs to push off of this base down here. So, all right, let's do it. All right, so I think I got this as tight as it's gonna get. So I'm gonna carefully start to work this off and just make sure there's not a bunch of resistance to it. So let's see, 17 millimeter for the nut, and this is a 8 millimeter Allen for the top of the shaft. Should be good now. The spring is loose on, I don't know, the spring is currently loose. I guess that's the best way to say it. Shock nut is loose. Okay, so that's off. Let's get this carefully out of here. Okay, so I'm gonna work on starting to strip this thing down. I'll be working out of my vise here. You'll see I'll put the bottom eye of the shock into the vise and get it all clamped in. I'm using some aluminum angle here, and that's just to protect the shock as much as I can. You know, I still might get some light scratches or scuffing, but that's gonna basically stop it from getting super marred up. I'm also using a kit. I did another video on this, so if you are curious about it, I'm using a kit from Schmidty Racing. Basically comes with shock oil and various tools. And like I said, I have a full video on it that goes into depth, but throughout the video, I'll go into the tools I'm using and kind of explain how you use them. All right, so hopefully this angle isn't too horrible. Just gonna drop this into the vise, clamp it onto that bushing, and this did move quite a bit before. Looks like it's gonna move a little bit again, but it's the best it's gonna get. All right, so first things first, we've got to pop off this black cap here. Let's see. I thought I had a screwdriver laying around over here. Got a pick. There's gonna be some gaps. You just work your way under it and pop it off. Then it just comes off like that. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take out this little screw here. It's just a small Allen key, and this holds your nitrogen pressure in here. So I'll just let it kind of bleed out a little bit and hiss out, and once it's done leaking, I'll remove it the whole way. Cracked it loose finally. There we go. Just let that bleed off. All right, almost all the way bled. All right, and that comes out. And there's also an O-ring that's in there with that. So be sure to remove that as well. All right, so now in theory, all the nitrogen's out of the shock, and we should be good to move forward. However, we are gonna crack these bleed screws here and allow any additional pressure to bleed out. There is a chance that nitrogen passed up into the fluid and is sitting up there. So I'm just gonna crack these until they start draining fluid. That one's already draining a little bit. On my last video, I ended up taking these out. I really don't think that's necessary. I also think that it kind of opens you up to losing them and losing the little, if you do take these out, there's little metal BBs that are under here. So be sure that you don't just take them out all the way and then turn the shock upside down and lose those, because it took me quite a long time to find them on the floor. So, all right, so this is already bleeding. There's really not that much coming out, so probably good to move forward. All right, so next we're gonna use this 1/4 inch pin spanner that comes with that Schmidty kit. I'm sure you could get it elsewhere. And so I'm gonna line it up on, see if I can tilt this way a little, on these large outside holes. I'm gonna try to crack this thing loose. Fingers crossed. On the last one, the last front shock, so I just did this the other day, it Came out really easy. I'm probably jinxing myself now. See how it goes. So I end up using a hammer every time. And honestly, I did heat it up a little bit. I'm gonna see if I can get away without. I'd rather not melt the stickers if I can avoid it. All right, let's give it a shot. All right, so it's not really coming off too easily. I'm gonna throw a little heat on it with some MAP gas, and hopefully it gets it hot enough to break up any red Loctite that might be on there. I don't remember specifically if there's Loctite on these threads or not, but I know elsewhere in the shock they do that, or at least on the rears they did. So all right, let's just get it a little hot. All right, it's going. There we go. All right, so the outside ring is now loose. All right, now let's, there's this inside ring we're gonna do as well here. Now this should, see how when I move it, I don't know if you can see that, the outer ring's moving, the inside ring is not. So what I did in the last one was just put that in there. It should move pretty easily. Maybe not. There we go. Okay, so now that whole ring, the inner and outer moves as one, the whole cap. So then you can just use, the inner ring to bring that all out together. All right, now it's out maybe. All right, there we go. So I'm gonna try to keep as much fluid in the shock body as I can because I'm going to measure it later, and that will tell me about how much I need to put in it. Okay, I'm gonna put this off to the side. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and drain this. Okay. It's fairly empty there. All right, let's see how much we got. So I'm measuring just under 28 ounces on that. There might be some residual stuff left in here. I'll add to that if necessary. All right, so now I'm gonna remove this outer body, this silver portion here. I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but I think you get the point. So this is only sandwiched in place. It's not threaded or anything like that. That blue threaded portion we just removed threads into the inner bypass tube, which we're gonna show in a second. And it basically sandwiches that between the blue cap and this blue lower portion down here. So it came off pretty easy last time. I might, oh, there we go. So just by hand, I'm able to do this. If you can't get it by hand, you could use a strap wrench like this. I had to use these on the rears to get them off. But so yeah, there's the inner bypass tube, the internal bypass tube. All right. So now I'm gonna get these, there's two O-rings down here. I'm gonna get these out of the way. I'm gonna try to be careful and be mindful of the aluminum. I don't want to damage it. All right, and those both fell. All right, and now I'm gonna definitely get some heat down here into this portion around the blue ring, because this is always pretty tricky to get out for me personally. All right, so now what I do is I take a screwdriver or something, the biggest diameter you can to fit through these holes up here, and then you hope it cracks loose. And it did not. All right, put a little bit more heat in there. Let's see. There we go. Just popped it loose. Okay. That's free. All right, so next we have to remove this internal valve piece. Again, I don't know what it's called. I'm sure somebody does. But it should just pop out like that. Again, we're gonna try to keep that fluid in there. It's a little hot, as you can see. All right, so we do have a decent amount of fluid in there. So I'll dump that now. Okay. So not too much more, maybe another ounce, let's see. And that should all be all the fluid, because now we're totally open at the top. The only thing in there is the internal floating piston, and it's open the bottom here, so all the fluid is out of it. Okay, and that takes us right to about 29 ounces, which does match the other shock I did. So looks about 29 ounces, maybe with the leaks and all the extra spillage I had, maybe it's closer to 30, but somewhere in that ballpark. All right, so now we have to get that internal floating piston out. What I did last time was actually put the Schrader valve on that comes with the kit, and then I put nitrogen in it, and I had the nitrogen tank set pretty high, to be honest, at 200, and it shot out onto the piece of wood I had. But I'm gonna try to do it with compressed air this time. Might be a little bit more controlled, and then I don't have to waste nitrogen. So let's give it a shot. Just put it in. Yeah, obviously turn it upside down. I'm gonna put something soft down here so it doesn't damage the piston. And then I'll put air into the, I guess this fill port here. Okay, just like that, just took a tiny bit of air, and we are in business. All right, so real quick, one thing I forgot to mention was I did go ahead on my first shock and measure the depth that this floating piston was inside this lower portion here. And it measured pretty much exactly at 2 inches. So, I would just measure yours to make sure you're gonna set them back up the way they were. For me, I'm gonna make sure they're both equivalent, so I know I measured the first time, so I know 2 inches is what I'm gonna set it at. But yeah, I used a little pair of calipers here, and I used the little depth function there to measure it. So yeah, just don't forget to do that before you blow it out like I did. All right, so we are gonna get this shaft assembly disassembled. Not sure what the proper name is, but that's what I'm calling it. We got it snugged pretty tight here in the vise. I am not on the actual part, the chromed part that the whole shaft slides in and out on. So I'm not gonna damage that at all. It's a 3/4 inch nut on top. They're pretty tight. I think these are one of these metallic locking nuts. Anyway, so then I'm just going to disassemble it. I'm going to try to keep everything organized here. And again, I took pictures of everything so I know what it's supposed to look like going back together. All right, so now I'm going to go through and just get all these parts wiped down and cleaned off, and then we'll start replacing the different parts that are replaceable, and then we'll get it all assembled back together. All right, so here in the Schmidty Racing Rebuild Kit, it includes basically all the parts you're going to need that are consumable to rebuild your shocks. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this guy right here. There's a wear band and there's a gasket underneath. So I'm going to grab my picks. Just going to pop this off and try not to damage any of the metal around it. So it simply pops off there. And there is a small thin gasket underneath that. Okay. Give that a wipe down now that we've got those off. Okay. So now inside the Schmidty kit, basically I just look for the equivalent part. So obviously these are identical. So grab one of those. And sometimes the O-rings are a little tricky. Generally, if it looks like it's the one, it's going to be the one. I will say with one note that sometimes the Schmidty kit, they're in different colors, but I believe, and it's good, it's also good manufacturing practice to not have two parts that look similar but are different. So so I put a little bit of shock oil on this just to protect the O-ring when I'm assembling it. I'm going to drop that in here. All right, fits in nicely. And now I'm just going to throw the wear band on here. All right, so this part's good. Oh, hopefully you guys can see everything I'm doing there, but this part is good. All right, so next I'll start working on this guy here. There's several parts on this. The easiest being the O-ring, this big fat black O-ring here. So I'll just pop that off for now, and I'll put it down to the side because I don't want to forget to put that back on, obviously. And I will say, before I get too far, you don't, on the front shocks, you don't end up using every single part in here like you would on the rear. It's basically a one-size-fits-all for the rear kit or package, but the front shocks being a little simpler because they don't have the piggybacks, you don't use all of them. So this is probably some of the hardest portions of this rebuild are removing these three pieces in here, 3 or 4 actually. Again, I'm not sure exactly what they're called, wipers and stuff like that, but just use your pick in here. Careful not to stab yourself. Really, oh, see, it's really tough. See, I got it started there, but it's really wedged in there. All right, here it comes. All right, so there's that. So note, this one is like the hardest. The one that goes furthest, most out, if you will, is made of the hardest rubber. I like to keep that here, so that way I can line up the old and new and make sure I'm oriented correctly. All right, next one coming out, a little easier. All right. And now there's actually two more small pieces in here that are part of the kit. Hopefully you can, I know it's probably not super easy to see. All right, there's one. And then there's one more, and this, the last piece I'm gonna get out, as far as the order that I'm doing this in, is this little kind of split washer. There. So these two sit on top of each other, like so. And they are replaced in the kit with a single piece, and I'll show that right now. Let's get that out. So those two pieces are replaced with this single whitish one. And then the two others look pretty identical. The hard black outer piece and the softer black one here. So also keep note on like the orientation that these were in. I believe, I'm almost certain, that the flared end on this, see how it's kind of wider at the one side than the other? The flared end is towards the threaded portion of this guy. All right, so I'm gonna get this cleaned out just because it looks like there's some assembly grease in there. I'm gonna get this cleaned out and then I'm going to put it back together. All right, so time to get these back in, which is a definite pain. Obviously, you're gonna go in the order opposite that you took them out in. So, a little bit of brake clean still left in there. Let's get that wiped out. It's kind of I don't really know the best way to do this. Kind of just gotta get it started and then just work it in. And being 45 degrees in here right now, it does not feel good on your fingers. All right, finally got that one in. I ended up using a little Allen wrench to help jam it on and save my fingers. Next is the middle one here. All right, that one's pretty easy. Now this last one is pretty difficult as well, just because it's so hard. Let's see if the Allen wrench can save me again. Man, it's tough. Almost there. All right. And it just went all the way in there. Perfect. All right, so this is completely rebuilt. All right. And we should be good. Oh, let me replace this gasket while we're right here. So let's find the matching one. All right. This looks like this one right here. Again, I'm going to use some shock oil just to lubricate that. Get that on gently. All right. So that should be good to go. Now I should actually be able to start putting this all back together on top of the shaft. All right, so to get this thing back together, we're going to use this bullet tool from the Schmidty racing kit. So that just plops on there to the threaded portion. And what that's going to do is allow you to get this back onto the shaft without damaging all of these seals or wipers or whatever they're called. Because if you didn't use this, you have to go over the shoulder here. And while it would be possible, I guess, I believe these probably expand a little bit to give you your seal. And you probably would end up damaging those. So, all right, we're just gonna put a little bit of oil on that. Probably put some grease or whatever if you wanted. I just have the oil handy, and I figured all of the components are probably compatible with said oil. All right, so now get that put back on here. Gently work that on. All right, that's good. And next is this guy. All right, so now I'm going to pause, and I'm going to reference the pictures I took to make sure that I know how to get this back on the way it's supposed to be. So I'm gonna pause, check that out, and I'll be right back. All right, so I got all squared away by looking at the pictures. I'm gonna talk you through it. Again, I think you should take pictures to verify and to easily reference, but it was the big washer on the bottom in this orientation, and then it went small to big on that shim stack. And I did keep the shim stacks separately because I think they are different. All right, and this guy with the bigger openings on top in this, once again, in this orientation. And then it goes big to small with these shims. All right, followed by the small washer, and then the nut goes on top. All right, so I'm going to tighten this up. Now, I'm not going, this is on the low setting. I'm not gonna over torque this or anything like that. I'm sure someone knows the torque settings, but I'm not going to try to break anything. All right, there we go. So that should be about it for the shaft assembly. Again, that's just what I'm calling it. So, and also just to reiterate, I am using aluminum jaws, or like it's aluminum angle inside my vice jaws there. So that's going to prevent significant damage on the shaft. So, all right, now I'm moving on to the body. All right, so I've got the lower portion here in the vise. Just to note, everything is cleaned out. I avoid brake clean and wipe down as best I could. So we're gonna get started here by replacing. There are 2 gaskets down here. Took my gloves off because I thought I wasn't gonna get greasy, but here we are, oiling those gaskets again. Okay, same thing with the other one. And these 2 are identical, just to be clear. All right, so that's on now. Okay. I'm gonna put on the body, and I'm gonna align it per my markings here. Carefully put it on, not making sure I don't damage those O-rings that I just put on. All right, so I got it all lined up there with my marks. All right, so next we're gonna grab our internal floating piston here, and this had a wear band and like a really fat O-ring there. So we're gonna replace those. Okay, wipe that out. Got some kind of nasty debris in there. All right, so now we'll get our replacement O-ring on. Again, in the Schmidty kit, this one's different color. This one happens to be red. Get it oiled up. Get it on to the internal piston. All right. All right, so this next part is a little tricky. So you're gonna, this wear band does not clamp closed like the other one did. So it's a little difficult to get to stay where you want it. And also you kind of have to simultaneously get it down into the lower portion here, which is easier said than done. So note the O-ring goes down first, so the cavity is up. So the best way I found to do this was to get the O-ring, kind of have to drop it in here and get the O-ring started, but don't go too far in, because let me show you. All right, so as you can see, I've got the piston kind of set in here, and you can see the wear band kind of does not want to stay in place. So you kind of have to work it down into its groove. And once it's set, start pushing the piston down. And when I did this on the last one, it kind of set in place. I started pushing it down, and it kind of was happy while the piston was partially past that groove, if that makes sense. And then I was able to push it down all the way. So I'm gonna try to make that happen. Obviously it's gonna be really hard to show on camera because my finger's gonna be in here. So you'll just have to trust me. All right, I finally got it all lined up. Definitely not, I wouldn't say like the hardest part, but definitely like it's pretty finicky. All right, so carefully put it in. All right, and so now, I had measured, no, hopefully I had mentioned this when I took it out. I had measured that this piston upper lip was 2 inches off the top of this face here. So I'm just going to slowly and carefully lower that down in there until I hit my mark. And this is just a pair of calipers I've got locked in place. Now, I did go a little bit too far the last time I did this, and it was a pain to get that piston to come back up. So do small, very small increments. We're very close. And I would call that good. All right, so the next thing we got to put in is this guy here. Again, I don't know what it's called, but one thing I noticed when I did this the last time is I wasn't able to fit all the old fluid in at first, and that's because this was not allowing the fluid to pass it quickly enough. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to put a little bit of fluid in here and then place this. So that way, what was happening, basically there was an air pocket in there, and obviously we don't want air in our shock. And this is above the piston, so this should all be fluid up here past this point. So put a little bit of fluid in. I am going to fill this up to our, I believe it was 29 ounces. Yep, 29 ounces. And then this portion that we're putting in early, will count against our full 29. All right, and again, this is the kit I got from Schmidty Racing. It is their, if I didn't mention it, it's their Gen 2 Raptor shock rebuild kit. So basically, I just put enough in here to make sure that this assembly, this valve assembly is covered, if you will. Like, you have to like push it into place to get it fully seated. And if it's covered in, fluid, to me that means that there's should not be any air pockets in there. All right, so next we're gonna grab our bypass tube. All right, and this just simply threads in here. Move this so I don't dump this all over the floor. Get that snug. All right. Okay, so we're in the home stretch. Now we're gonna put on this, the shock body, I guess. We'll get this lined up with our marks down here. Carefully put that on, try not to damage the O-rings that were down there. All right, and now we should be good to fill this up with fluid. Got the remainder of our allotment here. Try not to make too much of a mess. This funnel does like to pour out the bottom like that. And my last one was pretty accurate, to be honest, so I don't expect any issues here. All right, so that's all in there. Now we're gonna grab our shaft assembly. All right, so that simply works its way in there. All right, and be careful, don't shove that in too fast or all your fluid's going to shoot out. And then we're gonna start threading that in slowly. We're probably gonna lose some fluid, but that's all right. Because that means it will be full. So we're gonna tighten up. I'm gonna just get this kind of outer ring a little bit snugger so that way it's out of the way. We're going to tighten up this inner ring first, because what this inner ring does, it attaches this top cap, I don't know what it's called, to that inner bypass tube, and that's what kind of locks it into this bottom portion down here. And then the top cap, then the outer ring here sandwiches the shock tube, the body, and then the outer ring locks in the shock body in position. So probably gonna get some squeeze out here. Yep, there it is. And I do have those bleeder valves still open, so any air that gets trapped in there should be, I can see bubbles right now coming out. Oh boy. All right, so this whole thing's turning on me. So I'm gonna loosen up this. Oh, the outer ring's not engaging. So I'm gonna have to hold the body here. So as that O-ring was getting into the shock body, it was causing it to spin a little bit. Just like that. So just before we clamp everything down, we'll have to make sure that is aligned how we like it. All right, so that reached a point where it no longer wants to go. So I'm gonna get that lined up there. I'm gonna get the shock body wiped down because it's covered with oil right now. All right, so now I've got this cleaned up a little bit. I'm just gonna give this inner ring a little love tap because it was on there pretty tight. So I'm just gonna give it a little tap in place here. All right, that stayed in. All right, so that should be pretty good. Let me just give it, see if it needs anything else here. Nope, does not want to move, so we should be good to go. Now we're gonna do this outer ring. Get that done by hand as much as we can. It's going pretty smoothly. Grab our other spanner here. All right, get that tight. Let's do a little tap here. Got pretty. I'm gonna do one more because that came out. That moved a lot there. Okay, I'm gonna call that good. All right, so the last thing we need to do is we need to install the Schrader valve at the bottom of this. So let me spin this around, and I'll show that to you. All right, so the Schmidty kit and most of these rebuild kits come with Schrader valves, and that's going to allow you to basically gives you a method to get the gas in the shock. I don't know how they do it from factory, but all it had was those little set screws with O-rings. So it simply just threads in place here, and this has an O-ring, obviously. It simply threads in place, and I'm gonna tighten it up here with a little wrench. Now, be careful you don't over tighten that because I believe the Schrader valves are steel and the body here is aluminum. I will say, like, there's not a lot of zone where that like seems to be tight. It kind of like just bottoms out on the O-ring, I guess, and then it gets tight kind of quickly. So, but I haven't had any issues with it, so I'm not too concerned. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna hook up the nitrogen system and we're gonna charge this shock, and then we're gonna bleed it out. All right, so I'll go ahead and show you how I refill these. This kit is from SRS. I'll put a link in the description for where I got it. And I did get this tank. I bought the tank off Amazon, and then I did a bottle swap with my local welding supply store to get some nitrogen. And that seemed to be the most cost-effective way for me to do that. But anyway, so this is set at 200 psi at, if you will, like at the shock. My regulator is going to read a little higher than that, but this kit does have a pressure gauge that's built in. So what's nice about this kit is go ahead and you thread it on to the Schrader valve here with this collar, and you keep this top screw all the way out. So what that does, that actually activates the Schrader valve inside, so that way you can minimize your gas loss, if you will, as you take the hose assembly off of the shock. Okay, so get that decently tight. All right, so I do have this this valve closed down here. Let me move this down a little bit here. So I've got the valve closed on this kit here. Look kind of hard to see. There you go, it's this blue valve. It's currently closed. I'm going to engage the Schrader valve with this screw here. I'm going to open up my gas. I'm going to attempt to open up my gas. Make sure that stays tight. Okay, so now this line is fully pressurized up until this valve here. I'm going to open up the valve. Okay, I hear gas moving through the shock. All right, I'm only seeing 180 psi, so I might need to mess with this regulator. I'm not sure why that's the case. So I'm going to open that up a little bit. Just a hair over 200 now. So I'm going to close the valve. Oh, and that's not good. I'm losing gas already. So I'm gonna leave that go for now. I'm gonna have to obviously recheck that, but because it's pressurized now, I'm going to crack open these lead screws a little bit, just until there's the air should come out first because it's gonna rise to the top. So if there's any air bubbles that come out, you'll hear it and you'll kind of see some bubbling. And then once it's only fluid, then I'm going to close it. So I'm going to crack it open. Oh, okay. I heard a couple pops of air, not a lot. We got this other one. Okay, no air come out of that, only fluid. So we should be good to go. So I'm going to wipe this down. And then we're going to confirm pressure on our shock here. Tilt this back down. Got fluid all over my fingers here. We're going to confirm pressure. We're at 180 again, so I'm going to open up this valve. Okay, just over 200 psi. Close that. And so now I'm going to back this screw off here. Like I said, it's going to close that Schrader valve. Okay, so that should be closed. And now we're going to carefully remove this. Might hear it's a tiny bit of gas. Yep, there you go, just a tiny bit. And that's the gas that's between the valve and this fitting here. That's it. Or I guess maybe it's in this hose as well. I apologize. All right, put the cap on. All right, so this thing is all rebuilt. The only thing left to do is put the dust cap on, which is right here. Pop that back in place. And then we just have to get the spring and the top hat on, and we're done. All right, so it's time to get the spring back onto the shock. I did go ahead and buy a new spring compressor, and I just did the last one, and I'm really impressed with this. This is a unit from, it's from Amazon, but from a company called OMT. Sorry, here it is. It's basically this tube design. So I think what's nice about this is the tube is giving it the strength while the threads are just doing the clamping, while in the other design, the threads, the all thread is actually giving it its strength and preventing it from bending, which it doesn't do a good job at. The tube, with its larger diameter, even though it's hollow, does a much better job of stopping that bending from happening. So all I gotta do on this kit is open it up. And I already have this set basically from the last time I did this. So it's kind of where I want it to be. I'm gonna do a little bit of fine tuning here. Open up a little bit more. Because it did, when you release it from the shock, the shock itself is holding it, the springs closed more than it was before, obviously. So I don't have I have to open it up a little bit to get it to where I want it to be. So get this tightened down, and there is this kind of, I don't know if you can see it here. There's this locking collar here, and that kind of clamps this jaw closed, so it kind of gives it a nice grip on the spring there. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side. You'll see this, I don't know what they call this, like a safety bar or something, I don't know. I don't know really what it's doing, other than maybe if something goes flying, it's keeping everything together, or it might be stopping you from binding it too much. I guess that's possible. I'm really not sure. I put it in place just because I figured it had some purpose. All right, this. And yeah, this kit, I will say, let's get this a little higher here. There in the middle. This kit, I will say, gave me so much more confidence than the last one I was using, and this is way, you'll see how fast this is. It's kind of crazy. It's very nice. All right, so get that tightened down. Okay. Again, not really sure what this is doing. Let's tighten these screws down here. This is not obviously a video on how to use this tool. I'm just showing you what the overall process looks like. All right, so that's there. I'm gonna start compressing this. I got a long way to go. Another thing is I could do this on the low setting on this Craftsman impact, which this is not that crazy of an impact. I'm sure there's much stronger impacts out there, but I can do it on the low setting, which is quite nice. All right, so this should all be good. All right, so we'll start going after it. And I'm just gonna alternate sides to get some even compression. All right. One thing I did notice is that these locking collars that are right here that hold the clamps on, they do like to loosen up. So occasionally I was just having to go and tighten those up as I go. All right, so let's check that out. Now I'm gonna grab the shock. I'm gonna kind of see, I'll try to do it in this orientation so maybe you guys can get a view of it. All right, one reminder is that I'll be lining this up with my markings I have on here to keep everything lined up just the way we had it before. All right, so what I'm looking for here is to see if that shaft is starting to come through, and it is. I probably have another inch or two of compression before it's fully set. And also, one thing, don't forget to put in, I almost forgot, to put in your bump stop here. I'm gonna leave mine kind of towards the top there. Let's get this out of the way. We'll compress this some more. We'll check that out. Okay. All right, so now we're looking good. I'm gonna grab the nut and get the start tight. All right, so I think we're looking pretty good. I'm gonna grab the nut and get that threaded on there. All right, should be pretty safe to mess with now. Make sure my alignment's still good. Now we're gonna use the same tools we used to take it off to tighten it back up, and obviously everything's going to be in the opposite direction that it was before. Try to get that seated in there. Come on. There we go. Okay. get good and tight. All right, so that is fully back together. Now all we have to do is get these spring presses off and we should be good to go. So yeah, as you can see, these things work really nicely. And I don't know, I have not been this impressed with a single tool in a long time. Just nice. Maybe it's just because how bad the other ones were and how sketchy they were. These feel really nice. Now I just gotta get these off. All right, so now we have a rebuilt Gen 2 Raptor shock. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm sure there's things I might have missed and probably could have done a better job at explaining, but this should be ready to go back in the truck and should have a lot more miles left to give. And hopefully it'll save us some money down the road instead of having to pay someone to rebuild these or to buy replacements. So, all right. If you have any comments, leave them below, and I'll try to respond if I can. Thanks. Bye.